Everyone knows dogs eat things they should not. You probably have a story or know someone who does of a dog that ate something ridiculous or expensive, and hopefully the outcome was fine and no harm was done other than to the object itself. However, there are a lot of things that as pet owners you need to be aware of. A lot of them can be commonly found around your house. So this particular video is not going to cover everything that a dog could get himself into trouble with, because that list would be ridiculously long. I'm Mallory from AniMal Advice, and in no particular order, 6 toxins that can be found around your house pretty commonly that will end up sending the dog to the vet hospital. Number 1, chocolate. In my experience, a lot of pet owners now do know that chocolate can be harmful, especially the more concentrated amounts of cocoa or the darker the chocolate is. White chocolate and milk chocolate, not as dangerous, but all chocolate poses a threat to dogs. And even though a lot of people are aware of it, it's still, let's face it, it's delicious. So you're still going to run into dogs that get up on the table while the brownies were cooling, going to eat that entire bag of chocolate chips, and then you end up having to call the vet. What do I do? So for whatever reason, dogs can't metabolize certain compounds in the chocolate, and it can end up doing some liver and kidney damage if they get enough of it. It also, partly because of the caffeine, and partly because of a compound called theobromine, they will end up having seizures if they have a high enough dose and if it's not treated right away. So that's one, if your dog gets into that, you're going to want to call your veterinarian right away. Let them know exactly what happened. They'll be able to figure out whether you need to really rush them down or just watch them for more mild signs of maybe vomiting and diarrhea, depending on the weight of your dog, and depending on how much they ate. Sometimes if it's been very recently that your dog ingested this, your veterinarian may direct you on how to make your dog throw up, usually involving hydrogen peroxide, maybe some salt. Not something that you should just do with everything by any means. There's definitely some negative side effects to doing that. But depending on if it was really recent and if it was serious enough, they may actually instruct you to do that at home and then bring your pet in for things like IV fluids, and then just some supportive care for the system, as well as monitoring, because high enough doses, like I mentioned, can cause seizures and they can cause heart arrhythmias. So since a lot of people do know that this isn't good for dogs, luckily I think that not a lot of dogs end up passing away from this because they get prompt care, but it is possible. So very common thing to have in the house, and definitely something that will make them sick if they get a hold of it. Number 2, marijuana. So this is one that unfortunately people will not always want to tell their vet about. They don't always want to admit to having something like this in their house or to leaving it out where the dog may have been able to get to it. They're embarrassed, whatever the case may be. I can't stress enough, just be honest with the vet. Be honest with the receptionist when you call, because that's going to let the veterinary hospital, it's going to let the vet team be able to prepare for your pet when they're coming in. So a lot of times what we'll end up seeing is the dog ate the pot brownies, and now the dog is staggering around, can't keep its eyes open, it's throwing up, falling over, and in some severe cases, it can cause death. It would have to be a pretty high dose. So, but dogs don't generally show portion control, so it is something that can happen. So that's another one where you're going to want to get them to the vet hospital right away. The vet will probably want to make them throw up, depending on how much they had, and again, when it was ingested, they might want you to try it at home. But generally, just from what I have picked up, people don't really realize that their dog got into something like that until they start showing symptoms, and by then you need to just start supportive care, rather than try and do anything at home at all. Sometimes activated charcoal, we can give that, because that will help absorb whatever toxins are still floating around in the GI tract, to try and help them from further absorbing into the bloodstream and causing more problems. So again, that one's just going to be supportive care, and it's rare that dogs will die from it, but it's not impossible. And especially with some of the laws changing recently, there's a lot more likelihood that that's going to be around and that it's something your pet could get into. So definitely still an emergency. It's not something that you want to wait to call the vet hospital just because you're not sure how it's going to be taken. I promise you we don't care. We just want to do what's best for your pet in those scenarios. Number 3, another thing that is super common in a lot of households now is xylitol. And if you've never heard of that, that's okay. It's generally an ingredient that is in sugar-free products. So there's a good chance it's in your sugar-free gum. I don't know exactly what else. I do know one big thing that they're putting it in nowadays is peanut butter. So everyone wanting to cut back the calories or needing to have a sugar-free diet but still wanting to enjoy things may end up getting peanut butter that has xylitol in it, or if you just don't pay attention, if you're just grabbing peanut butter off the shelf, that's a possibility too. And xylitol is extremely toxic to dogs. It will drop their blood sugar ridiculously fast. So they'll just be passing out. It also can cause major kidney damage after a few days of it being in their system, or a few days after they've ingested it. It just does not do well on their system. So it's relatively safe for people, not safe for dogs, and unfortunately it doesn't take a lot either. So a couple pieces of gum, if you have a smaller dog, that is life-threatening. And of course, again, dogs don't practice portion control. So what you end up getting is, the dog jumped up or went into your purse, jumped up on the counter and got the entire pack of gum, or there was only one piece missing, or you're giving them peanut butter and just didn't realize, or somebody else is giving them peanut butter, or you're letting them lick the spoon of the peanut butter, what have you. That is definitely an emergency. So be aware of what's in your house as much as is possible. And again, don't hesitate to tell the veterinary team what happened. Don't feel silly that you left something out. Just let us know, because if you do know what's going on and you don't tell us, that's just more time that it's going to take for your pet to get the right help. So that one, we're going to be starting IV fluids for support to the system. Most likely going to be putting glucose in that IV bag right into the dog's vein, because it just drops their blood sugar super fast. And then also possibly some kidney supports, as well as being on IV fluids and being hospitalized for several days and getting blood work checked. So that one's a real serious one. These weren't intended to be in any particular order, but they're kind of getting more serious as we go. Number 4, moving out into the garage or the backyard, rat poison. This is surprisingly not one that a lot of people still realize is a problem, but it really is. The way that most rat baits and rat poisons work is that it causes these tiny little granules that cause them to bleed out. So the rat eats it, and they can't clot, and they just start hemorrhaging, they just start bleeding out, and the rat dies. Not the most humane way to get rid of pests, but that's a different video. But if a dog comes across this, for whatever reason, they want to eat it too, because they're dogs, and it does the same thing to them. So that one is a very serious emergency. It causes them to not be able to have any clotting factors in their blood, which is something that happens all the time in your body, not just if you get a cut. So they'll start getting bruises and bleeding under the skin, and that one can definitely be life-threatening pretty quickly. So something that, again, you're probably going to want to make them throw up. I always recommend checking with your vet first, and they can best instruct you on what to do, but possibly making them throw up to get as much of it out of their system as you can, and then getting right back down to the vet office so that they can administer usually vitamin K, which is a clotting factor, helps the body stop bleeding all the places that it shouldn't be bleeding, because that's bad. And then a lot of times hospitalization may be required, as well as sending home vitamin K supplements to continue for weeks or a month or something, until all of that is fully out of your dog's system. Another side note with rat poison, not just your dogs, I would really stress not to use it at all, because not only is it an unpleasant way for the animals that you're trying to get rid of to die, we also see a lot of times things like hawks and other predators, these other really awesome creatures that are going to be eating the mice and the rats that have eaten the rat poison, and then they end up getting the same thing. They end up dying from ingesting the animal and also so by second intention ingesting the poison. So not cool for the rat, for the bird of prey, or for the dog. But anyway, this video is about dogs. Number 5. Number 5 is also commonly found in the garage or outside in that area is antifreeze. And thankfully, this is one that companies have started to recognize the dangers of it, and they are now making it a little bit less deadly. Well, hopefully a lot less deadly, but a lot of the traditional antifreeze that is going to be in garages sitting around or leaking out of a car is very, very poisonous to dogs and to cats. Cats don't tend to bother a lot of these other things. They will, for some reason, drink antifreeze. But dogs, especially when it's hot out, they're outside, they're hanging out in the garage, they're hanging out in the driveway, and they find this puddle of sweet liquid, and they just start lapping it up. And it's another one that does not take a whole lot to start to affect their kidneys and their central nervous system. It affects the brain too, so they can start to have seizures. They can be falling over. They can lose control of their bladder because they're so not with it, and also their kidneys and their urinary tract, all of that are being affected, and they can die pretty quickly from that. There is a couple of antidotes that can be administered, but they're very specific. They're very specific to antifreeze poisoning. So I would definitely encourage, again, if you think it's a possibility at all, if your dog is not acting right, if your dog's acting drunk, acting weird, and you think that there has possibly been an antifreeze exposure, please tell the vet team, tell the receptionist when you call as you're on your way, because that's an emergency, and the more they know that it could be, they can test for it, they can check for it, and start taking appropriate actions at the vet hospital to try and stop it from being deadly. And lastly, number 6. Number 6 is a broad category, would be pills, but mostly I would say things like ibuprofen or Tylenol. Those are well tolerated by most people, not well tolerated by dogs. So they can cause severe ulcerations. They just get all these sores in their GI tract, in their stomach, in their intestines. They can bleed from those, and also the compounds themselves don't break down well, so they'll end up with liver and kidney damage from eating that as well. So I can't say this enough. Don't be afraid to tell the vet team what you think might have happened. If you came home and found the bottle of Motrin and it was all chewed up and you think your dog might have eaten some, just call. Don't wait. Once you see symptoms from the medications, once you see symptoms of kidney failure or anything like that, a lot of diarrhea from eating all of it, that means a ton of it has been absorbed into their system, and the chances of treating it and the chances of reversing any damage and saving the dog's life are even lower. So just as soon as you suspect something, get your vet in the loop, and it's going to give you a much better chance of helping your dog out. Money isn't usually, the biggest concern, although it's a factor in everything. But the longer you wait on a lot of these things, the higher your bill's going to be, simply because your dog's going to be sicker. So nobody wants to see their dog sick, and nobody wants to end up paying a higher bill when they could have maybe paid a lower bill and had a dog that was not so sick if they had done something about it sooner. So I just wanted to make this video so that people are aware of some of the things out there that can cause a lot of problems, just in case you weren't before. I hope that none of your animals, none of your dogs have ever had to go through eating this stuff and had to suffer the repercussions of it, but hey, it happens. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have been through this, or you do know somebody whose dog had to get treated for this stuff, and I hope it was a good outcome. But I would love to hear the stories, and if there was something else that's not on this list that you think is super common and something that pet owners should be aware of, let me know. Maybe I will do a video on that in the future. Thanks for watching. I'm Mallory from AniMal Advice, and I'll talk to you later.